Hi, I'm Ruby. I'm 12. I'm a Hunger Games fangirl. I'm Team PETA, and I believe that The Hunger Games is more than just a dystopian trilogy. There are a lot of lessons in it, like these. Know and develop your strengths. The most successful characters in The Hunger Games were the ones who figured out what they were good at and teamed up with other people who were good at different things. No one but you can define who you are. Or, to quote PETA, I want to be more than just a piece in their games. And if you fight with commitment and purpose, it's pretty hard for anyone else to defeat you. My mom has been trying to harness my Hunger Games mania for a while now. She has introduced me to Jackie Emerson, who played Foxface in the movie. After spending time with Jackie on campus and on the set of She's So Boss, her newest project, I've started thinking a lot about Foxface. Foxface was sly and wily, but without Foxface there would have been no rebellion. Jackie is possibly one of the most awesome people I've ever met. Being an actress is just a small part of who she is. She's a Stanford University student, she's acted in Shakespeare, she's funny, and when we went to a Chinese restaurant, she ordered in fluent Mandarin. I'm so happy to introduce you today to Jackie Emerson, the moderator of the opening plenary at YTHLive called Inspired Youth-Driven Innovation.
It's funny, because I battle with a lot of internal nerves.
Ritual unions got me in trouble again.
I'm looking around at these amazingly talented women who are writing all sorts of different music, very innovative, and they feel like they don't have a bigger platform to share their music.
Love's sinking in the sand.
Asking an 18-year-old to plan the rest of their life is kind of ridiculous.
Love is not like they say. I lied, it's hard to make it stay. I drown my feelings in the sea, then dried out over on the beach.
There's no guarantees, no safe bets. Kind of have to create because you can't help yourself.
What's my greatest fear? And I'd have to say that it's fear itself.
Because middle school sucks. Girls go through a lot during these years. That awkward phase kicks in where weird things they don't understand are happening to their bodies.
I know you've been through all of this. You ran away so many times. Your kids, your heart a couple times. Love is not like they say. Alive, it's hard to make it stay. I drown my feelings in the sea. Then dried up over on the beach.
Something that's so, I don't even have words for it. A lot of people are like, oh, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a writer, I want to be an actress, I want to do exactly this. But I have so many things I want to be and so many things I want to do that I can't really put a name on what it is. Hi everybody. First, I just want to thank you, Ruby, for that lovely introduction. I don't know how I can follow that. So boss, it is a heavy title these days, especially when I'm speaking in front of 400 people that are bosses themselves and over 1,000, I think, who are connecting to us online right now. So I have to say it's an honor and a privilege. Thank you for your time. With words like boss, bossy, so boss in the spotlight right now, I thought it would be good if I gave you guys my definition of what I think boss is. A boss is demanding and assertive, of himself or herself. A boss is persistent and committed in the face of obstacles, no matter how large or how frequent. A boss is innovative, creative, but most importantly, a boss has a big heart. A boss has a sense of humor, and is someone who can forgive himself or herself if he or she makes a mistake. Now, I know some of you are probably listening to this going, that's not me, I'm only a couple of those, or I'm only one. And I just want to say that I'm in the same boat. It actually took me until about 3 weeks ago, till I was able to look at myself and say, you know, I balance Stanford with work, with a job, with a family that lives overseas, with friendship and relationships, and that's boss. Which led me to the realization that being boss doesn't mean being a boss. It means taking these words and manifesting them into every aspect of your life, and being proud to do so. And I have to say, the coolest part of coming here today and speaking at this conference has been meeting some of the bossest people I have ever met in my life. I mean, they are the advocates, the innovators, and the forward thinkers of this generation. They are also some of the most wonderful people I know. So it is my pleasure and it is my honor to introduce to you all Anthony Siss, Devin Lytle, Niharika Bedekar, Jack Andraka, Eric Martin, and Adora Svitak. So I think we're going to get little introductions from everyone. Anthony, do you want to start?
Hello, my name is Anthony Siss. I'm a senior at Connecticut College. I'm originally from Chicago, and I've done a number of different positions. I've held a number of different positions on my college campus. I started a Queer People of Color group, which is a student group that was started 2 years ago, and this is the first year that we're officially getting recognized as a student organization on campus. And Connecticut College was also just recently named one of the top 25 LGBTQ-friendly campuses across the country. So it's quite a big deal that we are finally getting recognized as a student group by the institution. So.
Hi everyone, my name is Devin Lytle, and I'm an actress from Los Angeles, but more than that, I'm an advocate for the feminine. I work for a company called Sheila Kelley Ass Factor, and I teach women to accept their bodies and curves through pole dancing. Yeah, I said it, pole dancing. I read bodies every day, that's my job. And I also realize that women are confronted with body image issues and confidence on a daily basis. So I teach women how to step in their power through their bodies, but I also teach women how to step in their power through their stories, and that's where I developed Real Talk. In 2012 and 2013, I did a conference with Jackie, and we did a body image panel, and we realized there was a lack for conversation. So I developed an app called Real Talk, which is it's a digital safe space where female celebrities and women can go and share 27-second videos of a specific story in which they grapple with things that we don't talk about, like body image, confidence, finances, mental issues, all things of the nature. And also, I am the resident old person on this panel, so if anyone wants to meet me for early bird special after this, I'm ready to go. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Niharika Bedekar and I'm a freshman at Stanford University. My greatest passion lies in puberty education and support, and I can see a lot of adults in this audience, and I'm sure you guys know that puberty was not an easy time for anyone. It's such a formative period in a person's life, and often people are they struggle with it because there's just so many changes happening in such a short period of time, and a host of mental disorders, including depression, eating disorders, body image issues, they all have their roots during puberty. So that's where I come in. I attempt to demystify what can be a very, very scary process, and I teach girls about the changes that are occurring to their bodies and just how their social lives are going to change. And I promote a healthy body image, and by giving girls the confidence to be proud of themselves, I hopefully empower them to be the women they want to be. Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Jack Andraka. I'm 17 and I'm currently a junior in high school. Back when I was a freshman, I developed a new way to detect pancreatic, ovarian, and lung cancer that costs 3 cents and takes 5 minutes to run. making it 168 times faster, over 26,000 times less expensive, and over 400 times more sensitive than our current methods of detection. And then also can detect the cancers in the earliest stage and be broadly expanded to pretty much any disease, ranging from Alzheimer's to other forms of cancer, even HIV/AIDS and heart disease. So the possibilities of that are really endless, and we have some really exciting results with that. And now I'm pursuing the Nokia Biosensing X Prize for $2.25 million, and with a thing that diagnoses 100 different diseases for less than a penny. So that's my current research. And I'm also an open access advocate such that everyone can do science no matter where they're from or where they come, like any other factors. Yeah.
I'm following that. I make video games. Right. So I've worked on a couple of video games. One was about the immunology and games generally for like social good in the developing world. And I also do education reform work. So me and a bunch of other students have founded a new organization called the Advengers to create a student bill of rights and sort of push education reform from the student side, which is almost never heard. So.
Just like Eric, I'm extraordinarily passionate about education reform, and actually I really got my start speaking to schools when I was 7. After I published my first book, I began going to elementary schools to try to get other kids into reading and writing, which led to me beginning to speak at education conferences to audiences of teachers. And then in 2010, I delivered a TED Talk called What Adults Can Learn from Kids. What I realized from going to TED was that I was the only 12-year-old there. And whereas it was a moment that made many people say, oh, good for you, I saw a problem, which was that ideas worth spreading shouldn't really be limited to just kids. And so I went and started a TEDx event in my hometown in Redmond, which is how I know Jack and Eric, as they were speakers in previous years. And I've been extraordinarily privileged to have started an intersection of ideas and given fellow youth a platform. I'm also very passionate about feminism, having spoken about issues in that area recently as well. And I'll probably be going to UC Berkeley next year, so go Bears.
You know, I was 7 when I published my first book, too. So I think we're going to open up, we're going to have a conversation up here, and then we're going to open it up to the audience for questions. So we're going to start with something very broad, which is what inspires you to innovate? Who's Jack? Go ahead.
I volunteer as tribute, I suppose.
It happened. Someone would say it.
Had to get that reference in there.
It's all right.
So what really inspires me to innovate is everyday problems that I experience. So for example, with one of my projects, the pancreatic cancer one, I actually became interested in that because a close family friend who's like an uncle to me passed of the cancer when I was 13. And then I realized that we really don't have any mechanism for detecting the cancer other than the 60-year-old technique. I mean, that's older than my dad, but also it costs $800 per test and is grossly inaccurate. And so that was one of the things that really inspired me. But also, for example, on one of my other projects, which is water quality, I was inspired to do that just because I do kayaking and mountain biking. I see the direct impacts of water pollution every day. So I used recycled plastic water bottles to create a water filter that costs 70 cents and in 5 minutes filters out 90% of all heavy metals. And then you can heat shock it in boiling water, reclaim all of those heavy metals and pesticides, and then sell them and subsidize the cost of the filter. So just using everyday problems to see how you can help change the world in a positive way. I suppose that's what I do. Yeah.
Wow. That's fantastic. Devin?
I think what inspires me to innovate is stagnancy, actually. I think that sitting, for an example, with what I do with this advocacy for women, I think with this vicious song and dance of body shaming, especially in our panel that we did a year ago, we see this women just chilling in this problem of body image. So I just decided to do something about it by developing an app.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I think that a lot of innovation, kind of to go off of those 2 points, it happens when we see something happening to other people. Oftentimes when it's just ourselves, we feel like it's not a big enough problem, but then if you look at your neighbor, you look at your classmate getting bullied or not having an opportunity or whatever it might be, then that is a tremendous impetus to go on and make change. I definitely think of innovation in a less STEM-ish way than Jack does, largely due to my own ineptitude with that. But I think that innovation doesn't necessarily have to be with new gadgets or a new app on a smartphone. It can also be with taking a different approach to a policy, to something we look at in society. So I highly encourage all of you humanities folks to also think about that and how we can innovate just through everyday use of language, through the way that we treat others.
Anthony?
I completely agree with Adora. So I also do not specialize in STEM at all. But what it does inspire me to innovate is the fact that I know there are so many people who can benefit from different resources and people benefiting from each other and what we can provide each other, right? So through student groups, through providing different resources and reaching out to other people. So my uncle, he passed away from AIDS-related illnesses in 2007, and he went through a lot of discrimination for his HIV status and for his sexual orientation. So I'm constantly thinking of how we can support other people like my uncle who are in similar situations to make sure that they're getting the support that they need emotionally and also physically to be able to get access to things like treatment and testing sites and things like that. So that's what inspires me to want to come up with innovative ways to reach out to different populations in different communities. And starting a Queer People of Color group on my campus was really interesting because the first meeting that we had a white ally who clearly stated, and it's a very inclusive group, so it's not only open to queer people of color, but the student who did end up coming to our first meeting said that she wanted to be a better ally for her best friend who was a queer person of color. And so during our meetings, we talk about the intersectionality of queer issues with feminism, with a number of different topics, and we realize that being a queer person of color really does embody so many different identities and so many different challenges that really do intersect with other movements and with other identities as well. So.
You know, it's funny because I'm hearing you guys all basically say that the things that are kind of hurdles are what inspire you. And I was wondering on that note, what is it that holds you back, if anything? Or is it all kind of used as inspiration?
So one big thing that does hold me back is the reluctance to discuss taboo topics, because I mean, guys especially just don't want to talk about periods. They just want to ignore that women every month get a period. And I think that is just one of like the first steps that make girls uncomfortable with these changes that are occurring in their bodies. And another thing I've realized is I don't think it's even on purpose or anything, but parents are unwilling to talk about this with their kids, because they're like, oh, they'll learn about it in school. We don't have to do that. And that just kids think about, like, why have my parents not told me this? Is this something unnatural? Is this something that I should be hiding? And I think that in order to move forward and in order to create this acceptance, it's very important to brush away or to change that stereotype. Periods are normal. They're going to happen every month if we want them or not. And I think that's just a very important lesson to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Anybody else?
Oh yeah, definitely to that point. So I was reading this book, Half the Sky, maybe some of you have read it, and the section on maternal mortality, there was this very powerful line, which was, the truth is people don't like talking about pregnancy because pregnancy is messy. It has to do with blood and it has to do with sex. And maybe if there were none of that involved, then people would talk about it. But the truth is, yeah, a lot of the things that are worth discussing are incredibly messy. And I know from going to a lot of conferences since I was very young that a hush would settle over a group of adults talking, particularly if it was about something, maybe a talk that had been a little bit R-rated or whatever else, because I was so young. And I could sense it. I think, though, that we have to realize, particularly in the 21st century, that the access to information that kids have is unparalleled. And I've talked to guy friends and I've asked them, this is a great conversation starter, when did you start watching porn? And I realized that if people aren't getting sex ed or they aren't getting access to information that's clear and that's correct, period, then they're going to get other kinds of information from other places. So it's a very, very modern and very urgent concern, I think.
Going off of that, as a scientist, I mean, of course, am I the only scientist? Oh, darn, I feel all alone. But, One thing that is particularly harmful in the entire field of science is closed access publishing, and that accounts for 90% of all of the published information out there. And that means when you want to access a scientific article, you have to cough up $35. And for young scientists, I mean, that really quickly adds up. For example, on my project, I had to use around 200 articles. That was pretty much all my Christmas money for several years. However, what we've really kind of created is this fundamental barrier between the general public and youth and science, where we have all these big STEM initiatives saying we need more kids in science, but when we have a Katy Perry single that costs 99 cents versus seminal science article that costs $35, that's a bit of a mixed message. However, also we have this problem in pretty much everywhere. I mean, Harvard University, the richest academic institution in the world, recently stated we simply don't have enough money to continue paying for this. And we've created this very rigid kind of aristocracy where only 0.008% of the population, those are the only people who can access this information. That kind of the knowledge elite almost, the big university labs and the corporate labs that can afford the articles. And then you have 80% of the world, 5.5 billion people who don't have access to the internet or information whatsoever. And because of this, we have this giant knowledge kind of gap and discrepancy that, man, we're just throwing away so much human capital there. And by opening that up, we would be able to make it such that regardless of whether you're from China or Cambodia, Mexico to Malaysia, whether you're a billionaire living on less than $1 a day, you should have the exact same access to information, because science shouldn't be a luxury and knowledge shouldn't be a commodity. It should be a basic human right for everyone.
Yeah. Eric, do you have anything to...
Yeah. So something that I think is really problematic that I encounter a lot is I hear it's too hard a lot. I think especially when we're dealing with kids, we're very eager to say, oh, go and do whatever you want and live your dreams and you can do it. But we create sort of a facade of not really teaching kids how to overcome the hardships that they're going to have to deal with if they're really trying to change something fundamentally. And you see this on all levels. You see this, so I've worked with people in the federal level, Department of Ed, and all the way down to teachers, and it's a lot of good intentions, but it's very hard to shift systems when there's a lack of incentives. But then kids also have to deal with trying to live up to these expectations that are thrust upon them, that they're the ones that are supposed to change all of this. I know, so a bit of background on me. I, in middle school, tried to do some social justice type work, and I failed miserably, and I was driven into a very dark place where I found myself with severe anorexia nervosa. And from this, the dark truth was that I didn't want to go back to school, because school was the place that perpetuated all of my fears and anxieties about trying to improve the world and trying to be the best version of myself than all the expectations and all the judgments. And I was actually more content to stay in the hospital where I was hospitalized and kept because that was safer, which is an awful situation to be in for any kid. And our schools are really good at putting kids in those situations. And it was actually a lot of experiences outside of school that got me through that whole phase and whole process.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I personally can relate to that story, as I think a lot of people can. And that kind of, what do you guys think can be done about this? We post some major issues right now that are holding us back. And what are the steps do you think that need to be taken to kind of remedy them?
Well, definitely the first step is conversation. And that's honestly what we're doing right now, is just talking about it, get it started. It starts from us, honestly, and we're so blessed to be in this day and age where social media is at our fingertips. And I think that's a major tool at our disposal. And it's a major tool in the youth's disposal. We're raising a generation that's never been present before, a generation that's evolved with technology. I saw this video online of a toddler trying to turn the page of a magazine like she does an iPad. We're literally evolving this way as creatures. We can use it for evil or we can use it for good.
Mm-hmm. On the same vein, the reason, so when I talk to girls, it's always in a very closed, small group environment when everyone is very open. And I realized it's because when I was let me give some background about myself first. I first got my period when I was 9, and when I was 9, the average age of getting your period was 13. So it was the summer before 5th grade. No one else looked like I did, and it was a hard place to be in. But as I got older, I realized that it was fine. All my peers caught up with me. So that's what spurred me to start creating these small group environments in the first place. And I realized kids want to talk to each other, and they're much more willing to talk about these taboo topics and to just open up around other kids. And it's all good for like doctors and parents and mentors to say that you're okay, everything's okay. But when you hear it from another kid, when you hear it from someone who's going through the exact same things you are, it's a lot better. And I think, like what you were saying, conversation is what needs to happen.
Anthony, I'm sure you found stuff like that with your group.
Yeah, and I think a large part of that is really, in addition to the conversation, visibility. Because there's so many people who don't come out as either LGBT or come out saying these personal stories of issues that they go through, because there's so much shame and there's so much discrimination for people who go through these particular issues, right? And one thing that I particularly focus on because of my uncle is on HIV discrimination and the fact that it is so difficult to disclose your status to anybody, even within the community, because there's so many obstacles, there's so many kind of false illusions that we put towards each other, saying, oh, well, you're HIV positive, I don't want to talk to you, or if you're HIV positive, don't come back home, or I'm not going to support you financially or emotionally. We need to deconstruct all of that, but it starts with this visibility piece. And the visibility, it's not as easy as it sounds, but in addition to that, we also need to spark the conversations and have the support systems in place so that the visibility is no longer seen as shameful, is no longer seen as discriminatory for future generations, and even for our own generation. We can't always put the pressure on future generations and the younger generation to do more, because we are also part of that generation that needs to create that change. And if we don't create it and if we don't spark it, then how do we expect the younger generation to do the same as well?
Eric.
So my immediate response also to the question about how do we shift to change is to say, like, incentivize the change. You know, you have to make people want to change, but on a more systemic level, when we're dealing with people and being comfortable with themselves and being willing to have these conversations. So there's an excellent book by a woman named Jane McGonigal called Reality is Broken. Yeah, one hand clap, but and she's a gamer also, so my bias is here, but she talks about the ways that this upcoming generation is so, again, technology attached. Kids in the US at least play an average of like 10,000 hours of video games by the time they reach 10th grade, which is roughly the same amount of time they spend in school. So it's basically a parallel track of education. And kids play these games not because they want to just waste their time doing something stupid. They play them because they feel safe and secure and they feel empowered and encouraged in these spaces, which we do really badly in real life. And this was exactly my case. After I got out of the hospital, I played World of Warcraft. And I joined a guild, and I got better through playing World of Warcraft. Yeah. And, you know, there's many things. I encourage you to look up her work talking about that. But there's also going to be a session, I think, later at YTH where a woman named Nancy Lublin is going to be showing off a thing called Crisis Text Line, Crisis Text something?
Crisis Text Hotline.
Crisis Text Hotline. Which is basically, instead of a emergency phone line that a teen calls if something's going wrong, they text, because texting is just such a safer medium for kids to use. And thinking innovatively like that about how to get to the kids' level or how to get to people's levels about where they feel safe, rather than expecting them to come to wherever you feel safe about something, is critical.
So I just want to thank you all for sharing your stories, because that's exactly what we're talking about. It's starting the conversation. And on that note, I'm going to open it now to the audience for questions. So,
hey, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. So I love what you said about technology and video games. I'm a gamer myself, and as a young person who is very immersed in technology yourself, what do you want adults who work with young people to realize about technology that you don't think that they're getting?
So the first thing is talk to kids about the tech they like. I see a lot of in teachers in particular will assume that if they just like throw in some educational video games into their lesson plans, that'll automatically make kids like love school. And it doesn't work that way, because the things that are exciting and engaging about video games are different for each kid, but they're usually more along the lines of they feel safe and secure, and there's a social environment there that, you know, meets them at their skill level in the game world and all of these other things. So talk to the kids about, you know, what do they need and what do they like, rather than just assuming, is really important.
Hi, I wanted to say thanks. I'm Becky. I have a question for Anthony about your work with the Queer People of Color group on your campus. On my campus, we have a few different groups. We do have a Queer People of Color group. Then we have like just queer people. Then we have queers and allies. And I was wondering if there's a similar experience on your campus, and how, or even if there isn't, what measures do you go to include people of all, like, who might be interested in all the possible different aspects of queerness or coloredness, multiculturalism. But then if you have any advice for maybe how to bring those groups together on campuses that have very different queer spaces, and what you might say about maybe co-sponsoring events or getting them all in the same room at once if there are tensions.
So that's a heavy loaded question. But so at Connecticut College, we have 3 queer groups that are associated with the LGBTQ Center. There's Spectrum, which is our Gay Straight Alliance. We also have Queer People of Color, which I started this 2 years ago. And we also have CQ Squared, which is a queer and questioning support group. So it's specifically it's a very private space for people who are questioning their sexuality. So the members of the group aren't necessarily disclosed, and it is something that is kept very confidential to a certain degree. But we all coordinate. We all have staff meetings, like at least once a month. We try to do it twice a month if we can. And that is something that we particularly discussed last time we met, was how do we get all the groups to engage with one another, and how do we make sure that people who are attending Spectrum meetings but not QPOC meetings are also getting the same information, and how we can bring all the groups together, right? And I think that's, so I mean, the purpose that our group was created, QPOC was created, wasn't necessarily because of the fact that Spectrum wasn't necessarily addressing those needs in particular. It's just that for me personally, I found it problematic that students of color who did identify as queer weren't coming to the center for a number of different reasons, whether they felt uncomfortable, whether they felt that the demographics of the people who were attending the LGBTQ Center didn't necessarily reflect their own identities and kind of their own skin color and things like that. So by me creating the Queer People of Color group was really just a way to say, hey, this center is open for you and for everybody else. So just make sure that you have the opportunity to come in and step into the door and feel comfortable and safe in that space. So that's the reason why our group in particular isn't necessarily just for queer people of color. It's open to everybody. And we have had a very, very diverse number of people who identify as straight, as gay, as bisexual, as trans, who have come through and who have been queer people of color and not, or just queer people in general, who just simply want to engage in a conversation of how do we engage all of these groups and all these different identities within the center in one space. And so, I mean, that's the reason why during our discussions, we don't have meetings about what are we going to do to fundraise, next month's event, or what are we going to do for an event for like April or something like that. Our group isn't necessarily focused around that. Our group is necessarily focused around the conversations that people want to talk about, and they bring it to the group. So literally, it's just me sitting there and then everybody serving as the role of a facilitator to create these discussions and to make sure that what they want to talk about and the needs that need to be addressed in that particular space at that particular moment are being spoken about at that meeting, at that time. So to really answer your question, it is kind of a sense of trying to find a way to bring all the groups together and forming the sense of identity, right? I think identity is like a huge thing, because the identity of QPOC is different from Spectrum, but we're all part of the LGBTQ Center. So that is one umbrella identity and umbrella term that we all need to make sure that we recognize and acknowledge. So one thing that we have spoken about doing is basically having members of QPOC go to Spectrum meetings and having Spectrum members go to QPOC meetings as well when they can, if they have time, to make sure that everybody's engaging in this conversation, and so that when we do events, it is more of a kind of collaborative event as opposed to a single event that's hosted by one group or another.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Did you think of Gabriel? Because that's brilliant.
Yeah. Well, actually, yeah. I think it's a thing on college campuses. I don't know if all college campuses have them, but yeah. So we have a Gabriel. I mean, I know Yale University also has Gabriel events too. So
I think we should just change the month name.
Yeah. And I don't know why it's in April either. So that's a good question. But yeah, we do have a Gabriel. Yeah.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions from the audience. I think we got here and then in the back and a couple more and somebody here too.
Hi, I'm Sophia Yen, adolescent medicine specialist from Stanford and founder of the Silver Ribbon Campaign to Trust Women. You all can grab some freebie silver ribbons from me or upstairs. My question is, what are your favorite top 3, if you can go down the line, apps and websites about sex and sex ed or this kind of field?
Down the line. Okay, well, and I noticed that they're a supportive event, so I was pretty happy. Bedsider is great. Then there's also... yeah, no, seriously, like, I remember going to this museum about sex in New York City or something with my parents, and I was like, oh, I recognize these, and they were a little bit like, whoa, what's going on? Why does our like 13-year-old daughter know about all this? And I was like, the internet. So yeah, which probably gave them the wrong idea. I have really great parents. So yeah, that would be number 1.
Shout out.
Number 2 would be, this one isn't really about sex though. I like the Post Secret blog because I felt like it was the first place where I went to where I saw that people were actually really sharing, and it's very related. I think many of the secrets are very intertwined with human sexuality and with experiences that people have had. So that was where I saw, I guess, just a great place for sharing in a supportive, curated, but still anonymous way. And the third one would be Columbia University's Go Ask Alice, a really good site.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Okay, so I guess I would have like 3 unorthodox answers. I might not be able to think of a third, but the first one would actually maybe be Reddit, which is really weird. Not because of the front page, which is often sexist and misogynist and terrible.
Agreed.
But because of some of the
Agreed.
Some of the other sub-communities are really excellent, where people are very willing to share anonymously, their thoughts and feelings about all sorts of like emotional, relationship, sexual, everything. And you can certainly feel safe participating in that space because nobody knows who you are. But there's still a very strong sense of community depending on where you are on the site. Another one, which is also unorthodox, is my guild website, where the people that I played World of Warcraft with were still a pretty close-knit community. And people there talk about everything under the sun. And I've learned a lot of good information from them. The third, I can't think of an app, but the Facebook page for the LGBT center for my the LGBT center at my university campus, University of Maryland, is really excellent about putting out material. So I think communities like that are really, really important.
Great. Jack?
Oh dear. Okay. So probably number 1, that's a scientist. I would suppose it'd be the NIH website. I mean, also my AP Bio book. I don't know if Adora. It went into way too much detail in some places.
It was good.
I know. But and then also Crisis Text Hotline. I sometimes use that just in case I have a question about something. I'll just be like, hey, and it's always like kind of a safe place because on texting you don't necessarily feel like this kind of societal pressure where you're just like, oh no, I can't talk about all these taboo subjects I would never talk to my friends about. And then the last one, I suppose my reading on Naruto fan fictions. I don't know.
No, fan fiction's great. I love fanfic.net.
So I really like. I'm gonna wait. I really like Ask Alice too. My second one is actually Google, which is very, very just like Google.com, and it's actually it's not my favorite, but a lot of girls have come up to me saying that they typed periods into Google and they think they're bleeding to death. So I think I'm not really a fan of it, but it's definitely, I think it's just very important. So that's a long-winded explanation. And the third one isn't actually a website, but it's a book that I hope will get turned into a website. But it's the American Girl book about like growing up. And I read that.
I did too.
Yeah. It is just it's the most comprehensive book. And if you guys have like daughters or sisters or friends, I would definitely suggest giving it to them because it lays out everything that you need to know, everything that's going to happen. And I guess it should probably be turned into a website/app soon. So maybe that should be a thing.
Well, my number one was Reddit as well, but it's a subreddit, and it's 2 X chromosomes. Oh, claps. There we go. Yeah, that's a very great subreddit from the feminine perspective to all things to do with sex. I actually believe that Planned Parenthood has an excellent website because I just wandered on there one day and their Tumblr, and it just speaks to you from a place that's very human, which, you know, as a girl going on websites, you're like, oh, wow, okay, it's okay, cool, we're good. And then also Tumblr. I think Tumblr is a major resource for people exploring their sexuality, for exploring what works for them, what doesn't work for them, and it's a very accepting community, I think.
Yes. So my number one is actually the Stigma Project. Has anybody ever heard of the Stigma Project? Yeah, they create these really awesome visual images of basically what it means to live with HIV, and they do it in a very it's an eye-appealing kind of way. So they basically deconstruct the stigma around HIV, how to speak about HIV in a very comprehensive manner that isn't stigmatizing to people living with it. I think it's an awesome website, very easy to use, very easy to navigate. They have an app, it's called TSP Social, which is also really great and awesome. So I just love that whole project. They're amazing. And I also agree Tumblr. My close friend over there, she is also a Tumblr fan as well, but me and her, like, we just go on that all the time. We repost each other's blogs, and it's always about sexual health education or body images or you know, positive body images, whatever, all this stuff. I mean, it's absolutely great. And yeah, so that's a really great resource. And also Circle of Six. Has anybody heard of Circle of Six? Yes. Yeah, so it's a rape prevention app pretty much where you establish these 6 close friends in your circle, and you have 3 options of either sending them a GPS location, an automated text message, or an automated phone conversation, in which if you're in the situation where you might be sexually assaulted, you could just simply click buttons as opposed to sitting there and typing a ton of spending time typing a message or doing all these things. So the moment it came out, I thought it was the greatest thing ever. I promoted it to all my friends. I was like, my friends are nodding like, yeah, you told everybody, because it's really great. It's really awesome, and I think it can be used in so many great ways beyond the sexual assault and sexual prevention kind of component. So.
Great. Well, thank you all so much, and thank you guys for your questions. It has been a pleasure, and it has been so wonderful hearing you all speak. And I guess we're going to turn it over to the one and only Deb Levine.
Okay, so I did not pay those guys. All right. I really didn't. Welcome to San Francisco, and welcome to YTHLive. We are so happy to have you here in this beautiful weather and this incredibly special part of the city, and to be here with you this year. We have a lot of people to thank for us being able to be here today. Kaiser Permanente, the Ford Foundation, the National Institute of Mental Health, the National Office of Women's Health, Vodafone America's Foundation, Orshore Technologies, Bedsider, Health 2.0, Planned Parenthood Federation of America, the National Library of Medicine, Uber, and One Pacific Coast Bank, and Wellet. It's really, we are so thankful to everybody for helping us to put this on this weekend. So that was some opening panel. Huh? Yeah? Thank you. I'm constantly in awe of our young people. And this is our 7th year. I've never actually said this out loud, But for those of you who've been here before, you may have noticed that we always open with young people's voices. Today's opening intro for Jackie Emerson was done by a 12-year-old, my daughter Ruby. Okay, it's been... Oh, I'm not allowed to cry. It's not the first time I've cried today, actually, and you'll hear why soon. So YTH, which is the organization behind this conference, is also 12 years old, going on 13. And it's true that Ruby and YTH were born in the same year, 2001. As the founder of YTH and the mother of Ruby, I'm keenly aware of what being teenaged means. I'm living it every day. The tumult and the chill, the extreme highs and lows, the blemishes and the pimples, and the constant feeling of newness when you're standing on the cusp of childhood and adulthood. This year, YTH hired a new executive director. She's a millennial, and her name is Jamia Wilson, and her job is really to take our organization from those overbearing parental years of taking care of a nascent organization and gracefully negotiate our way through adolescence and into adulthood. I need to be clear that I'm not giving up on anyone, on either of my children during the teenage years, not Ruby and not the organization. And I'm staying on as president of the board of directors for at least 2 years. And most of you know, as organizations grow, they really need new visionary leadership and a different set of skills than what a startup organization or a new baby needs. And here's really what I mean. Jamia is calm when I am frantic. Jamia is thoughtful when I blurt. Jamia asks for support while I blindly run around trying to do everything myself. I feel certain that what Jamia brings to the organization will form an incredibly solid foundation to sustain YTH and our groundbreaking work in youth, tech, and health well into the next century. Please be sure over the course of the conference you take some time to meet Jamia, and I'm proud to introduce her now to deliver our opening keynote.
People try to put us to down, talking about my generation, just because we get around. Talking about my generation.
Wow. Thank you so much, Deb. Thank you for your warm welcome and for your faith in me to handle your baby as it grows. I promise that I'll honor it in the most righteous way. Thank you. And thank you to all of you for being with us and joining us in beautiful Japantown. How you doing? I want to hear you. Everybody's quiet. How you doing? Is it good? Good. So here at YTH, we like to talk about what's new, what's happening now, and what's next. And I'll start off with what's new. I'm new. I'm the new executive director of YTH, and I'm following our founder and now board president, Deb Levine, and her 12 years of trailblazing, visionary, and feminist leadership in youth, health, and tech innovation. Life has a way of coming in full circle. Let's talk about sex for a minute. Will you let me go there? Thank you. See, back in the late 90s, I was cruising the interwebs for some info about health information, this young African-American Black Baptist girl. And whenever I'd ask my dad, he'd say, I'll let you know when you're an old enough, mature adult to know about that. But that time never came. So I just decided in my all-girls boarding school, and this will date me a little bit, when I was cruising around on Netscape, and I was thinking about the fear-based sex ed that I was receiving and wanting to find out some information just because I was curious, not because I was going to put anything into action, because, come on, I was away in this school where I was in study hall 6 hours a day. But I was looking for some real talk, and I wanted real talk that went beyond dogma and shock and awe slideshows with scary pictures that we watched in class. And luckily, some of the shame-free resources that I found that were incredibly refreshing helped me get some accurate and honest sex ed information. And it turns out that they were created by Deb Levine, who designed Go Ask Alice. We heard about that earlier on, which was a pioneer question and answering service, as well as contributing to Planned Parenthood's Teen Wire. And both of those places gave me really good and solid information. So it's kind of surreal that over a decade later, I'm collaborating with Deb, the rest of our board, and our youth advisory board to enliven our long-term commitment to intergenerational leadership in youth innovation and mobilization. I'm honored to be our first ED who grew up during a time where I could benefit from the advent of youth tech health solutions. And I look forward to continuing Deb's legacy and expanding the reach of those resources to young people today and in the future. So, as you can tell, I came to YTH for very many reasons, including my love of working with dynamic and diverse teams. But there's one reason, most of all, that I came. And slide, please. And it's because I believe that the revolution will be youth innovated. So give me some noise here, because do you believe that the revolution will be youth innovated? Because I do, and I really believe this. And here's a picture of two millennial innovators who were born at different points within our generation, but held some commonly held threads that I think we all have, these millennial sensibilities from my life stage and the life stage of some of the people that you met in the panel, that include a focus on impact and a connection with an eye on sustainability, and you may recognize one of them. These are youth innovators who really inspire me. Because for the millennial generation, Beyonce, who I love, is to innovation what Madonna was to reinvention for Generation X. I truly believe this. And she's representative of a generation that's been pushed to a freelance economy, where people have had to recreate and redefine terrain. Her groundbreaking self-titled release was very, very much a surprise to all. And she did it without promotion and just used the power of her community that she trusted and her fans to create a cultural shift toward proactive, creative, and collaborative social enterprise. And Andraka, just as boss, or even more so than Beyonce, because hey, he's saving lives, has just been described as the Edison of our time. And he's developed a pioneering low-cost early detection test for pancreatic cancer before his 16th birthday. And he's done that despite obstacles and despite naysayers. And just like Beyonce, he decided to move past the haters and continue to be flawless. So that's right. I believe that the selfie generation may just change the future of healthcare, our culture, and beyond. I'm tired of hearing that we're the me generation. We're just the me generation because we understand what humanity means to us and how we can solve these problems for everybody else. I'm sure that you've seen and heard about all the think pieces that are pathologizing my generation. I read them too. And in fact, I just wrote about this for HuffPo Impact, but focused on one of the pieces that I actually think is accurate. Next slide. Did anyone read this piece? Yeah, I liked it. Here's the gist. So last month, New York Times Magazine contributor Yurin Yu, who's also a computer science grad student, argued that Silicon Valley had a youth problem. And he thought that while this problem creates a lot of cool apps, it doesn't make for good technology. And so I'm just willing to bet that if we trust young people to drive change forward through their intergenerational relationships and teams and dialogue, as well as create their own innovations that are supported and cultivated and encouraged, we'll be amazed at how much impactful, sustainable, and inclusive digital and mobile tech health interventions will become. And did anyone ever hear about the Skull research that came out this week from Skull Foundation? I know it's been all over Twitter. Twitter's been blowing up. But if you haven't, I'll tell you about that as well, because I think it connects with this. They released a social progress index, and that ranked about 132 countries on their social and environmental performance. And for me, the most gripping outcome of this research is that contrary to popular belief, surprise, GDP does not equal social progress. So for some of us, we already knew that. But I think for a lot of people who need to kind of see that on paper, it's really compelling and fascinating. And remarkably, US ranks fairly poorly on this scale, despite the fact that we have the second largest GDP per capita. We rank 16th. The Skoll Foundation's findings revealed that we're losing a lot of information and resources that can really improve lives because we judge countries and their potential just because of their financial wealth. And the study really begged a powerful question for me. What are we missing when we judge young people and assess their potential to ignite social progress because of their access to wealth and privilege? When I was working at TED, and actually for the TED Prize team, which is a $1 million prize to save the world, TED Prize winner and education researcher Sugata Mitra declared that youth possess an innate sense of wisdom, or as he sometimes described it, a fire of curiosity that's heightened when supported and encouraged through youth-driven collaboration and learning and engagement. And through Sugata's research, he realized that it didn't really matter what your social or cultural or socioeconomic background was, but there is a real consistent pattern that young people can and will teach themselves and each other when they're motivated by this fire of curiosity, but also when they're building community with their peers. And that's the reason why YTH collaborated with Level Playing Field Institute and Reach Ashland Youth Center to convene our premier health hackathon this weekend, which Deb will be telling you about soon and have some really great surprises as well. This was one small step for us, but also a really big deal and a big move toward bridging the gap in tech health and digital innovation for communities like youth of color and others who are at a perilous disadvantage. And by arming those of us who have historically lacked access to STEM education, we're giving them valuable skills that will allow us to compete in a more highly skilled and global workforce. And we're advancing us toward diversifying the power and the influence in the health tech industry. And I think it's really important for us to use words like power and influence when we talk about them because they're real. Again, I told you I'm about real talk. But that's why I'm committed to deepening my existing commitment and our existing commitment to gender equity, multiculturalism, and also reproductive justice as we work to drive our social and cultural change in this field. I view YTH as a bridge, a collaborator, and a convener whose work resides at the very sweet spot of intersection of health, tech, feminism, and economic and reproductive justice. And right now, we are fully present, but our eyes are on the future. Here's what's next. YTH is powering up by embracing participatory health and tech for youth, where youth are not being seen as just a market for new health tech tools, but instead they're welcomed and supported as creators of their healthier futures. And while we're building our efforts to develop innovative leadership among our most vulnerable youth, including youth of color, girls of color, and LGBTQ and trans youth, we're working to address the root causes of these inequities that prevent youth access to health tech and wellness. So the reason why I'm really focusing on this root cause piece is that one of my mentors and friends, Gloria Steinem, who is a feminist activist and writer who I had the honor and privilege of working with, taught me that the means are the ends. And that's why I believe in shared leadership and also why I'm dedicated to walking my talk and bringing that to the work that I do. I'm bringing these values as a part of YTH's next chapter, with young people as inventors and thought partners whose leadership, imagination, and input are critical to addressing our health issues. And that's why we're so focused on partnering with youth and the adults who care about them to advance effective solutions. I was born on the last possible year that you could be considered a millennial, so I'm on that borderland, borderline right now. And so it's really interesting for me as I'm starting to have to think about people holding me accountable for walking that talk as well, which is an exciting place to be. And that's why I like to surround myself with people who are younger than I am and older, so they can all kind of keep pushing and challenging me. Former Presidential Medal of Freedom winner Frances Hasselbein said that the leader beyond the millennium will be the leader who's not learned the lessons of how to do. The leader of today and the future will be focused on how to be, how to develop quality character, mindset, and values, and principles and courage. And studies show that millennials are really committed to this sort of leadership and really passionate about working with organizations that value balanced professional lives and impact-driven approaches to movement building. So I'm saying this to you now so I can be held accountable for promoting sustainable leadership as well. My goal is to embody and model the wellness-based mindset and values in practice and in everything that I say, to engender sustainable leadership that engages and motivates young people to create this change that we'd like to see in the world. And I promise that my approach to leadership will be with a culture of care as an imperative at its heart. My work as a leadership team member of FEM Future, which is an experiment in movement building that develops solutions for sustainability in 21st century feminism, further affirms that sacrificing humanity for productivity is counterproductive. And this generation really gets it. We'll be talking about innovation and sustainability during the closing plenary on the future of online feminism, because leadership is not just a one-size-fits-all approach. New times call for new tactics. It's not about an either-or with next-generation innovation. It's a both-and situation. From education avenger Malala Yousafzai to, has anyone heard of her? Who created the Malala Fund to invest in the most innovative and effective community and solutions-driven projects in the world, to groundbreaking teen media mogul and one of the most best and brilliant bosses I've ever had, 17-year-old Tavi Jepinson. Generation Selfie is innovating our future and taking the rightful place. And I just wanted to include this quote from Tavi that really inspired me. When I was taking the first day, when I told the team at Rookie, where I'm also a staff writer, that I was taking a new job and I was going to have to walk my talk now by moving forward in leadership and growing in my leadership, she sent me an email that said, "Own your throne like Beyonce." And so I wanted to share this quote from her that said, "If you're intimidated by those who came before you, understand that you too have a place right next to them." And I think this is a really important message for us to think about as we move forward as leaders, that it's up to us to define ourselves and the way that we're going to lead and to learn from the past, but also, as Deb always tells me, to trust ourselves to do what is right and what we feel is right. Another thing that Gloria Steinem, who turned 80 years young this month, taught me is that it's important to trust young people to know what's best for them. I always love it when she responds to critiques about young women and the issues that we prioritize by reminding us that she and her generation mobilized because they were mad on their own behalf. The fight for the vote that moved the suffragists before them to action didn't fire her generation up in the same way because they already had access to the vote. But the issues and barriers to access that faced them during their time were what mattered to them. And it was important for the generation before them to trust them to lead in the way they needed to do what was necessary. And just this month, Pew said that millennials were going to be the most financially burdened generation in our time due to substantial levels of student loan debt, and again with the real talk, I understand that from a personal experience, poverty and unemployment. We're optimistic about the future, and I think one of the reasons we're optimistic is because we're a solutions-driven generation. The research found that while we're unmoored to institutions, we're well poised for solutions creation because we're confident, we're connected, and we're open to change. We're going to be learning and sharing more about this optimism and problem solving that's happening across the board, as you saw with all of the great leaders earlier in all sorts of different fields. But that one thing is necessary for us to understand is that youth innovation is a necessity in each of these different fields and in each of these different conversations in order for our world to shift and for there to really be a paradigm change. So my call to action for all of us is just this one thing as we think about this conference and our work beyond. Keep calm and trust youth innovation. It's really important for us to do that. And just because something seems to be the way that it is, doesn't mean it's how it has to be. Instead of regarding the selfie generation as apathetic consumers who can only use technology to play and procrastinate, it's time for adult allies to provide our support and resources to equip young people with the tools, capacity, and resources they need to make a deep impact. And now it's time to meet the youth tech health innovators who are also building healthier future for this community. With no further ado, Deb will welcome our Youth Hackathon winners.
I'll stay here with you. Okay. All right. So this is absolutely perfect. We're just moving through the generations here. So this weekend, if you haven't been following Twitter, we partnered with Level the Playing Field Institute and Reach Ashland Youth Center to host the first ever in the United States Youth Health Hackathon. Over 40 young people and 15 adult developers and mentors worked in teams to solve their community's most pressing health problems. They tackled depression, obesity, bullying, safety and violence, sex education, and equity of funding for their own community. I gotta thank our hackathon sponsors, Kaiser Permanente, Ubisoft, Alameda County Healthcare Services Agency, Alameda County District 4 Supervisor Nate Miley, Balsamic, Apery, and the Cape Center for Social Impact. The hackathon was absolutely awesome. Find me anytime over the weekend to ask about it. But right now, what I really want to do is present the winning team, who came over in a limo from Ashland. So, please, may I introduce Team Beaten Track, Kat Cajuat, Tej Bradford, Edbert Dye, Sunny Rios, and Krista Henderson. Come on up.
We did, in the beginning of making our app, we brainstormed a bunch of problems that we thought that we could solve with it. And we brought it down to the need for exercise, healthy food, and publicity for small businesses. We were trying to promote the need for exercise by rewarding them with healthy food from farmers markets, and this would also promote the small businesses. And it also it would also allow people more access to healthy foods.
I am Sunny, but as I like, it's Ray instead. So, through research, we found that most teens around our age do have smartphones and use them frequently. We decided that making an app could be the best way to connect these people to farmer markets and other low-income places where healthy food is sold. So we decided that this could spread even further through people sharing how they won the reward over Facebook or Twitter, other social networks. So when people share this could make running and stuff seem like a game, so people would be more encouraged to run for free produce.
By using this app, it will track walking, running, and biking, or whatever exercise you're planning on doing. It will help you earn rewards, as in like produce, and it connects you to the community, and it also gives you health options near the user.
Hi, my name is Kat. So with all of these ideas combined, we created an app that encourages people of all ages to live an active and healthy lifestyle, be aware, as well as support local businesses by using their hard-earned miles that they ran or walked or biked as currency at healthy produce, for healthy produce, sorry, at participating locations, and consequently play a significant role in the community as all the while.
Okay, to build the app, we used my balsamic to prototype a user interface that would be very intuitive for our users. And we built the app with appry.io, which enabled us to create code simply. And we use PhoneGap to deploy our app on multiple platforms like iOS and Android. And we use GPS technology in our app to keep track of the user's mileage and to make sure that they're not cheating. Okay, and we kept all the farmers, the participating farmers in PARS, which is our database, and we accessed it with the PARS API, and yeah.
that is our app. It's called Be in Track, and we're gonna give you a we're gonna show you what we used in My Balsamic.
I don't see the button that was there. It disappeared. Sorry, technical difficulties. Highlight
it so you can drag over there.
No, it's not showing up.
Okay, so you keep working while these guys are getting it up, getting the app up. A couple of things to let you know. NBC Nightly News covered the hackathon and is covering the Young People's app. And what else should I tell you? These guys did not know each other yesterday morning. We started at 8 o'clock Saturday morning, and we made teams of 5, 8 teams of 5. These 5 young people did not know each other, and created this app with literally, and they also did not know how to code, so they created this literally in a day and a half.
And we are here.
All right, beautiful.
Next page. So this is where people obviously log in and register with an account, and just if they don't really want to take the time to put in an email and make a password, or whatever they want, they can quickly log in with Facebook, so they can have saved emails and passwords to log in.
So this is our main menu page. It's a little more simplistic than we would like, but we'll work on that. So we have our Track My Run button. And here you can see a map. It's going to be the map of your current location, and it will track the path that that you're running or walking on. And it'll also keep track of how far you've exercised, and which you can see later in statistics.
So the My Rewards is basically a list of what you have bought so far with your miles, which is the currency that we use in this, and you get your rewards from the reward screen, which is basically it's where you buy your rewards with your miles, and if you click on the base of just like the name and the cost and distance, it'll bring you to an area that has more info on it. And if you go add to cart, brings you over to the reward chart, which is like your chart so far, and then when you hit checkout, it buys everything and you get a voucher.
So when people get the voucher, they can go to their local farmer's market or, the participating one, and they can trade in their voucher for the specified item on the voucher. So
And that's our app. Thank you very much.
All right, wait, hang on one second.
So I'm also pleased and honored to ask Catherine Kwong to join us on stage. She is representing Congresswoman Barbara Lee's office, and Congresswoman Barbara Lee, we're so grateful for her commitment to youth health and tech, innovation and leadership. We're here to recognize the winners. Thank you. Give her a round of applause.
Good evening, everyone. Unfortunately, Congresswoman Lee could not be here today, but she sends her best regards and wishes for a successful and fruitful and rewarding conference. She, in terms of one of her many priorities is definitely health, and she wishes she could be here, but she has wanted me to present certificates of recognition for all of the winners today of the hackathon. And with that, we'd like to present certificates of special congressional recognition to the winners in recognition of your leadership in youth health tech innovation as a YTH Health Hackathon winner. We applaud your efforts towards building a healthier future for our community.
One more thing to say, and then we can get happy, because this is serious. So, remember I told you I cried once before today? So did I. And I might again, but right before the judges came back, we had these awesome judges from Pinterest and Ubisoft and Kaiser Permanente, Omidyar Network. They were like rocking. They come back from being out, figuring out who's the grand prize winner. These guys also won $2,500, by the way. And the vice president of digital resource innovations at Kaiser Permanente says, Deb, and calls me into this room called The Zone over at Reach Ashland Youth Center. And he says, we're going to fund the winning app. These guys are going to make their app with YTH. Woo! With that note, there's some snacks out in the hall, and then we'll get you. We have breakout session tonight, and we roll all day tomorrow. Thank you so much for coming to YTH Live.